Okay, it's a little past 1:30, and we'll get our meeting going for the Diversion Outreach meeting here for April 24th. Roger, I understand you're on the phone?
Yes, I'm here, Kevin.
Okay, so I'm assuming you want me to guide us through this while you're on the phone?
Yes, would you do that, please?
Sure will. Okay. So we'll go into our item. I guess we don't have an approval of the agenda, but there's agenda before you. And the first item on the agenda is the minutes from the previous meeting.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a
Second.
second to approve the minutes? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, the same.
Aye.
Okay. We'll move into,
Roll call maybe.
oh, yeah, I think, do a roll call, okay. Vern, do you want to, we have Vern?
Here.
Okay, Mike,
Mike Thorsted, West Fargo. Jake Gust.
Kevin Campbell,
Rick Steen.
John Strand.
and we have on the phone, we have Roger.
Yeah, Roger is here.
Okay, anybody else on the phone? Okay, all right, so we'll move into item number 2 then, and that's the North Dakota legislative update. Rocky?
Mike.
Yeah. There you go.
That one's on.
What, I thought it was.
Okay,
There you go.
I'm here all week. No, so North Dakota legislature, they're in their last week of the legislative session, rumored to be done Saturday this week, and so they have a lot of work left to do. The big update is last week, the House and Senate voted on the funding bill for the project and went to their conference committee. There's a lot of actions back and forth about what the final number, the legislative intent number should be in there. And it ended up at 750 million, which is 180 million more than we had when we started the session. It's short of our request of 870 million, so there's about 120 million dollars short of what we asked for. I think we're all pretty appreciative of the 180 million. It was tough to come back this session with Plan B and have the increased costs. And we went through the process. I think it was tough to explain to the legislature why we needed guarantee of the money so far out. You know, they were looking at over 5 or 6 bienniums, so 10 to 12 years, and they just don't do that for other projects. And so it was a sort of paradigm shift for them, because half the legislature, I think, feels legislative intent doesn't mean anything. We still got to come back each session, and you know, and obviously we have our maybe detractors out there as well. So it was a tough conversation, and we got to 750 million. I think the general thought now is we're going to have to take it back with our technical and financial advisors over the next couple months and figure out a path forward. And I know Commissioner Grinberg at City Commission Monday night said, you know, we're absolutely still going forward, and I think that's been the sentiment with others. Is this will have to work about how the financial plan tweaked to modify that, and there's been some options talking about that we'll have to solidify here in the coming weeks and months. So, that's been the big legislative update, but there hasn't been final legislative action yet. I think the governor's office was delivered the bill on Monday or Tuesday this week, which means it's in the waiting period where he can decide to do what he does on it. And so it's potential that we're still in running for more or not, but we'll let you know when that happens.
Any questions of Rocky on the legislative update? Seeing none, we'll move into item number 3, lands outreach activities.
Yeah, you know, maybe I lumped a lot together in this topic, but I know there's been an awful lot of outreach with the members of the impacted public. And I think we're at the point now where we don't necessarily need to report on each one of those, but I think it's good. A lot of upstream interest in land acquisition since Commissioner Sherling, the chair, sent out a letter to 550 individuals the lands team has been busy meeting with them and getting them assigned land agents and through the process. And so it's maybe not been our typical outreach to consider that outreach, but I think, those are the ones we've been hearing from for years. And so to have them in sort of the queue through the process is a pretty big step in sort of the outreach sphere of things. At some point, that's not outreach anymore. It's just land acquisition. But I think that's been really helpful. There's been a lot of meetings as well. There was a meeting in Eagle Township, which is the northern township in Richland County. We've never met there before. So those are big developments. And I think just dialogue's been opened up more. And that was in Christine, and I know there's conversations with the Richland County Commissioner there that asked for some information. He emailed again today and asked for some more information just about what we're doing in Richland County, who we're contacting, because they want to be more aware. And I feel like those are good discussions and good lines of communications that have opened up. I know Jason and Mary have been in an awful lot of meetings and townships and those side of things. And so people are interested. I think it's becoming more real. Things seem to be moving quicker in that regard. We'll talk about the Buffalo Red meeting next, but that was obviously another big lands outreaches. I mean, Eric Dodds is our lands guy, and he's been giving his presentation, and I think he's repeated himself a number of times over the last couple of weeks. And so I think it's becoming real for people. I don't know if anybody's been at those meetings, but that was my impression.
Okay, we'll move into item number 4. The Buffalo Red Public Permit meeting was held last night, and I was fortunate enough to be there for that meeting. I do want to compliment all of those who presented on behalf of the Diversion Authority. I thought they did a very professional job. It was very well done. The one thing we did is we stuck to the facts of the project, and I think that's what the watershed needs to hear and wants to hear is the facts as it pertains to the permit. And so that's my comments on it. Rocky, you were there as well. I don't know that anybody else here. Mary and Shirley was there. Rocky, do you want to?
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to update on this is just the amount of outreach effort that goes into the actual meeting itself. The presentation by Dr. Bob and Greg Thielman and Mayor Judd and Eric. I think we had 4 or 5 prep sessions where we went through, and there was actually some new information there. I think Commissioner Sherling said she learned some things new last night about the city of Moorhead, and Mayor Judd as a spokesperson is obviously a newer face as well. But also in addition to that, Kevin and Mary were both at meetings with some of the different counties involved in the Buffalo Red watershed. There's been a number of meetings with the Buffalo Red watershed members itself over their permit conditions that they had provided us draft conditions and asked for comments, and we addressed those last night. And so those meetings are important, but there's a lot that goes into those that help get to a resolution, so you're not going in, with cold feet. And I think my impression of the meeting last night is, it's a good opportunity for the public to both hear what's happening about the project, but then air their concerns too, because we take those back and modify things as needed. But I don't think there was any new concerns heard last night. This is my general impression, and I think there was actually a lot of members of the public that spoke in favor of it too. And one guy from Clay County who just said, you got to get something done. It doesn't matter what you do, but we can't keep talking about this. That's not healthy. I don't know, the most impressive to me was a mayor from a small town in Richland County that got up and spoke in favor of the project and said, they're continuing paying for the lawsuit and they're ready to move on. They rely on the jobs in the metro area here. It's having worked with a lot of people that speak at those, it's tough to get up and talk when you're in a room like that. And I think you guys know that, obviously, but it's tough to convince people to do that and ask them to do that. And so it's always nice to see new faces get up there and do it. And I thought they were treated respectfully last night. So, it was a well-done meeting. I don't know, Commissioner Sherling, he was also there if you want to say anything. Roger, I guess.
Yeah, Kevin, I was at the meeting also last night, and I really appreciate the professionalism that everyone presenting for the Diversion Authority, how they handled themselves, and presented the facts. I thought it was just excellent. And you know, every time I go to one of these meetings, whether it's our information or whether it's upstream, I come back learning something and I'm more informed. So more informed maybe about the issues of the upstream group and how we need to continue to work on that mitigation plan. And anyway, I was impressed with our presenters.
Thank you. Mary?
Well, I would just add as well that I thought our presenters did a great job. And as I had mentioned earlier before this meeting started, I learned something new, and I sit in these meetings a lot, and it's the same thing over and over again because it's a different group that we're presenting to. But last night when Dr. Bob was talking about the challenges of protecting Moorhead, I learned a lot. I didn't realize what their other alternatives were to this project, and it just drove home the fact that this is the project that Moorhead needs as well. And then kind of took a deeper dive into what the mitigation issues will be south of the Moorhead metro area. So I thought it was great. The other comments that came out of the public were really, I didn't think were addressed the real issues that we were talking about. So I was a little questioning about that because it's kind of hard to mitigate problems if they're not really presented to us, other than some other sort of plan or having retention and all of these things that have been talked about for years and years and years. But kudos to the presenters. I thought they did a great job.
Thank you, Mary.
It seems like with outreach, you breed more outreach, but two items that's coming out of this meeting or out of the permit, if we go forward and are fortunate to receive a permit, is there's a project that needs to be done in Wolverton and one that needs to be done in Georgetown. And as far as I know, I don't think we've ever been in Georgetown talking with the city of Georgetown. If it was, it's been an awful long time. I'm sure the Clay County Commissioners have had more communications on it than the Diversion Authority has as an entity, but both of those will, as we move to the construction phase, it's sort of, well, what do we do now? How does it change? And I think as we've learned with some of these other projects we've done, there's a lot of interest from the city of Georgetown, even if you're not an impacted parcel. If it's a project going on in your city, you want to be at a meeting and hear about it and those sort of things.
Yeah, Rocky, follow up to the Georgetown. I had been in conversation with Georgetown quite some time ago, but we knew that was going to be down the road. This was a couple of years ago when we talked to them, and what we did is we had members of the Buffalo Red Watershed District there, myself as the county commissioner, and we also had people from MnDOT there because the biggest hurdle with Georgetown, of course, is the Highway 75 on the north and the south ends of town. And so before I committed to having that be part of this project, we wanted to make sure that we would have the support of MnDOT to do those things. And they certainly were very open to that work. So that what has been done in the past. I think at one of our last meetings, I gave the maps of their 7 areas that are not completely closed that would help certify them. Did I give that to you? Okay, I gave it to Nathan, I think.
There was a map in the presentation last night, I know, of Georgetown and where the gaps are.
Yeah, and I had given that map to Nathan a couple weeks ago. But certainly that's a significant issue in Clay County. It's a significant issue with the Buffalo Red. That we pay attention to that, and likewise for Wolverton, I think, and I don't think there's anything earth-shattering in there that we can't help resolve. I think the difference in those projects, as we talked, I attended a technical staff meeting here a couple weeks ago, and those projects were brought up, and I think our message at the time from our technical team to the Buffalo Red was that we preferred that they would continue to work on those projects under their umbrella, because they've done most of the work already, the flood work in Georgetown, but that we would do our part to help financially on it. But I think we're still hoping that the Buffalo Red Board will be the ones who will actually do those projects. Georgetown, without our help, I think there could be a serious cost-benefit ratio thing, that if they were to go directly on their own to do that, to get it done. So I think that's where they're looking for us. And even though the impacts that this project, when in place, is very little. I think it's 1/10 of an inch on the 100-year flood. It's not real significant, but I just think they're part of our goal was to also obtain that permanent flood protection for as many communities along the river as we can. So, and I think that's enough said on that, I think, Rocky. But
Are there any cost estimates on those two projects?
well, I'm not quite as certain on the Wolverton, that because that's kind of developing right now, Vern. But I think I think on the the Highway 75 project, you could, Jason, I don't know, we could probably be looking at $1.5 million maybe on a project like that. And then there's 5 other little openings there, but some of those are 2 of the other ones are railroad. It's an abandoned railroad, so I think that could be resolved fairly easily. And then there's a couple of other small ones in there, but those would be not nearly the cost of the highway race. But, so. Okay, Rocky?
And just maybe for next steps there, I know they are probably not planning on taking action at their next meeting, because the public comment goes out till May 10th, I believe, or something like that. And so that would go past their next meeting. And so just off that assumption, that probably would be, the following meeting in May, or our expectation. But we'll see.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers visits and tours.
There's probably not a lot to update on this. I think everybody saw that the chief, General Semonite, was in town last week. It's fairly a large outreach deal that got plenty of news coverage. There's no follow-up items, but obviously when you have the highest ranking official in the Corps come, he toured both the downtown area with Nathan and Bob, and went on a tour with Jason, which I actually haven't heard anything about, but I assume it was a good tour of the area underwater, if Jason wants to update on that or not. But it's always good to have the general in town.
All right. Yeah, it was a great tour. Senator Hoven joined us on that tour as well, along with Colonel Calkins and several of the other St. Paul district staff. So we started out, went down south along County Road 16 and swung past the inlet control structure. So it was good for the general to see where the main embankment, and we pointed out where the Wild Rice River control structure, where that was going to be. And then from there, we kind of cut on the south side of Horace and along our County Road 14, close to where the Cheyenne River Aqueduct will be. And then he could see some of that overland flooding. And then from there, we went north, up kind of northwest of West Fargo, and then towards the Harwood area to tour some of the areas where we had a lot of extensive overland flooding over these last 3 weeks. So in general, I think he really enjoyed it. Senator Hoven, there were some new things that he learned and picked up out of that tour as well. And the general was very appreciative of, seeing, not only the inlet control structure and some of where those key features are going to be, but the flood impacts that are out there now, and the fact that those, much of those flood impacts are going to go away especially in the county rural areas between West Fargo and Harwood up towards Argusville, a lot of those go away with this diversion project. So it's a significant benefit for our Cass County rural residents.
And I think sort of the added value in having the general here to see those things is Corps is asking for $90 to $100 million, I think, in capabilities next year from the federal government for the wild rice structure to finish the inlet structure, and then some of the design along the embankment, I think, are the big ones. And then the following year is the Red River structure and the I-29 raise, which are big projects. And so it's nice to have the guy who really decides that from the Corps side to be here at the project to see that and have the buy-in, and have Senator Hoeven with him is helpful as well.
I did want to mention that was a good day to have them here to get the information from them, for them to see the tours. And I do want to add that Commissioner Sherling and I and a few others did have an opportunity to meet later in the day when they were here, and we were able to have some discussions about the project, and along with Senator Hoeven, and we had some quite robust discussions regarding WIFIA and TIFIA funding as well. And so I think there's still some opportunities down the road that's being worked on when it gets into your finance committee and those types of things. I don't serve on that, but I think there are some opportunities there. I think Senator Hoeven gave some direction into even not ignoring the TIFIA funding mechanism as well. And that's kind of goes through the federal highway system dollars that are available there, because we are going to be having some bridges and those types of things to build. So there's some opportunities there that we probably haven't fully even researched. And I learned a lot from that meeting. So it was nice to see. So any other comments on that visit? Okay, we'll move on then. Item number 6, the fmdiversion.com launch and traffic analytics. So, Tammy, are you going to talk to us about that? Okay.
And we should probably take launch off there because it's been launched since
Yes.
February. This is a really busy month for electronic means of outreach. We sent a lot of newsletters, so your whole first page is the newsletters that we sent. One thing that we kind of noticed is that maybe some of the 3 questions videos that we had produced previously, maybe not everyone that needed to consume them had already. So we threw them into some newsletters and sent them out and got a pretty good response rate. Some of those we kind of targeted towards legislators as well and had pretty good open rates. So yeah, I thought that was a success. If you look at the website analytics, we had way more traffic this month, and there was a lot of things that happened with it, so that's kind of to be expected. But one thing that's good is that if you look at our page views, it almost doubled. And the things that people were looking for were maps and about the project. And so I put up on the screen kind of what the about the project looks like on the website. So if you haven't taken a look at some of the new things that we've put on there with the timeline and project history, I would recommend you do that, because those are really helpful resources to people that are trying to understand all of the options that have been evaluated all the way back to 1997. There's been a lot of work done on this project, so it's a very helpful tool. At YouTube, it was a good month. We had, once again, almost double the number of YouTube views. Part of that's because of the newsletter listings. Part of that is just because we had a lot of people watching some of our meetings. And if you look on the last page, I don't know if you remember, but late in the year last year and kind of earlier this year, we were waiting for some actions to happen before we kind of went back and really started pushing hard on social media. So if you look at the last page on Twitter, we've started pushing, again, information out via Twitter. And so this is hopefully what it'll kind of look like now as we move forward, is that we've got a few more tweets and close to 500 profile visits and a ton of impressions. And so one thing that I did want to bring your attention to is that this is a really helpful tool for us to share information quickly and news articles about what's going on. And so you can definitely direct some of your constituents to this platform. And I would say this is our most up-to-date thing that we have, just because we're on it every single day following and stuff. And so You don't have to have a Twitter account to look at Twitter, but I would recommend if you do have a Twitter account to please engage and, share our stuff or like our things. And so, yeah, that's your report on analytics, if anybody has any questions.
Questions?
Maybe one lesson learned that we had is during legislative session, everything kind of becomes more crunched and the need for communications increases. And so we really tried to get our message out there for the need for the project, and we used that by sort of showing all the faces of the project in those videos. But we could definitely see every day you sent another newsletter or another, the open rates went down and people were getting, maybe annoyed that they were getting hit too many times. And so there's definitely a sweet spot there where you need to keep people updated, but they don't want to be inundated either. Yeah. And so, the other item on here is skip a couple ahead, but social media engagement, since Tammy hit on it, just asking for, your assistance, I guess, in engaging on there. I know I've heard from a lot of legislators this session that use that for their updates. I know the city of Fargo has our Twitter page as basically their web page for the project. So we try to keep that updated and current with what's going on, and especially with Senator Hoeven and Governor Burgum's involvement, we end up retweeting a lot of their stuff and vice versa. And so there's a certain population out there that does consume the information this way. It may not be for everybody, but it's helpful to have your engagement on it. I'll also mention the City of Fargo's Facebook page is great too. They actually live all the meetings. You can watch them streaming, and so it's always a good option too. I think we've been on a couple car trips where the meetings are going on, and we pull them up on the phone while we're driving.
Being distracted, or
the passengers?
Oh,
passengers.
Okay.
Mary watches them at night before bed.
All right. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Rocky. All right, so we have the 3 questions video.
Yeah, the other thing, when you get a general in town and we have all these great videos, we found some time to pull them aside and do our own 3 questions video with them. So Tammy and I got the pleasure of interviewing them. If you've never interviewed a general before, they're very intense and they know what they're doing. So well, I'm hoping the audio works. We didn't test it, so. My elbow makes an appearance in case you want to autograph later.
This is my second trip to this area. This project is important primarily because the magnitude of the project is going to need probably more than a local solution. It's going to need a local, a state, and a federal solution. And the federal government, I think, has a lot to add here with respect to funding options. And the Corps of Engineers is very interested in this because we have an awful lot of technical competence that we can bring to the fight as to how to do this. I think that when I was here a couple of years ago and heard about the devastation that happened throughout both of these states, Fargo, Moorhead, and the surrounding towns, we knew at that time that if there's anything we can do to be able to give people the quality of life, that they know that their investments will not be ruined, they can go to sleep at night knowing that they aren't going to end up being flooded in the morning, I think that's a big, big deal. So my team came up with a solution along with the Diversion Authority that we want to continue to partner on to be able to do whatever we can to be able to take care of the people of this area. From a science and engineering perspective, most of what we're doing here is relatively straightforward flood control, risk management, engineering. So we're going to learn some things, I'm sure, both locally and regionally. But I think the real potential here is to learn, is there a future in alternative financing? So this particular arrangement right now is some local funding, some federal funding, and some private funding that not only makes the project cheaper for the federal government, it can get it done faster because there's more capital on the table. It can get it done much more efficiently with less contracts. I would like to think that we learn from this, even if it's not the perfect solution, it's going to be certainly the good enough solution that we can then somehow transfer that same knowledge to other projects and find other great opportunities, whether it's on a river system or whether it's some other flood control system, that we can then incorporate that same learning back into other budgeting protocols. I've been very, very impressed just in the last 2 years with the great work the two governors have done to be able to find what we thought was a good solution to make it even better. So they've definitely got skin in. The diversion authorities all in, both of the mayors, Fargo and Moorhead, the rest of the teams here. And we've seen great support from Congress. I think great support from the Corps of Engineers, the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. So our commitment is to continue to be a strong member of that team from a technical perspective, to give whatever advice we can. If there's ways we can find either do something faster or a better value, we certainly want to do that. When it comes to funding, we can't necessarily commit to a long-term commitment. Our budgeting is year by year by year. We have seen that right now we're in for about $100 million of congressionally approved funding that's happened. And so we're going to start 2 more projects. One we started last week. We're going to start another one here in the next 4 or 5 months to be able to get 2 of the inlet structures up and running. And then we're going to basically continue to be able to champion Congress of where there's other good increments that could be funded. And whether that is going to be done in the president's budget or whether that's done through what we call the Corps of Engineer Work Plan, it's premature to be able to say how that works out. But I think the best thing we can do, or certainly I can do, is to take the leadership of my team that's working with your team here, understand the value of the project, and when I get asked in Congress and in testimony, what do you see the value of this project, to be able to give a straightforward answer. But at the end of the day, I think that this Fargo-Moorhead diversion project is a very, very good project, something that we want to continue to be a partner in, and I think that the people of this region ought to be proud in the leaders who have taken the bold step to be able to go down this road. And sometimes it's not a perfect solution. Everybody doesn't necessarily get everything you want, but I think this solution has come together is certainly a very, very good solution, and one we got to continue to build and be able to get in the ground. And it's only good if you can implement it. It's great to have a plan on the shelf, but unless you can get something in the ground that's going to help protect people's property, then we aren't going to rest until we get to that level.
So it's a couple of minutes longer, I think, than our normal ones are, but he said a lot of good stuff, so we just kept it going. And I think our next recruit for a 3 questions video, last week we had a press conference on Wednesday or Thursday up in Reed Township. There was a member of the public that spoke up by the name of Vern Bennett that had a lot of good things to say. And so we were going to ask Vern if he'd be next on our roster and have Tammy come out and work with you on a video, because I think that would be good to get you on camera.
All right, let's go, Vern. Okay, Winnipeg tour and flood operations.
Yeah, so here's a fun outreach opportunity that just came up. You have an itinerary on here, something we've been talking about with Commissioner Sherling and others for a while now. You know, with the flood this year, we've had an opportunity to learn a lot of things, but the Winnipeg is just cresting now, or in a couple days, I think, and their project will be in operation. It's a remarkably similar operation to our project will be at some point. And so we've talked about going up there in the peak time here and seeing how it operates and doing our interviews up there. So we want to go up there and do a 3 questions interviews with some folks, but we thought it's a good opportunity for our technical folks to go up there, for our elected folks. And so I think Tammy sent an email out to not all the committees yet, but I know to the board members, but it's open to any of the committee members too if you're interested in going. If we do run into an open meeting situation, we'll make sure to alert the press, and maybe that would be good to have them on board anyways. We have room for that. The Red River Basin Commission is joining us once we get up there as well, blanking on his name from Steve from the Winnipeg office. And so be great to have anybody they want to go. Starts at 7 a.m. on Monday. Coffee and donuts on the bus, but not too much coffee because it's over 2 hours to the rest stop. So just, yeah.
I just wanted to let you know also, Steve's working, he's really great, and he said that he was going to contact the mayor of Morris, Manitoba, and see if we could stop and chat with him on the way back to Fargo about when the project operates, what it means for that town. And so if you're interested in going, let me know, and let me know what type of sandwich you want and what type of chips you want. Otherwise, you're going to get jalapeno chips.
And Morris is sort of the staging area town. Is that correct? So it's sort of, I don't know, Oxbow equivalent type location to the project.
Would we have the opportunity to do a questionnaire video with those types of people? Okay. Okay.
I don't know if everybody's been up there for see the project, but I'm hoping I can go. But I'd like to see it in operation. I think it'd be neat.
How long does it take to get a passport nowadays?
You probably can't get one by Monday.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I know there is another option other than the passport. There's a option with Canada. I don't know if that's any quicker or not, but I guess I don't think so.
I don't think so. Okay.
So Tammy's number and email are on there, and she's had some response from the board and a couple technical folks as well. So we're going to pitch this at all the committees and the board, and find accommodations as we need to as number of people.
Well, I've seen the structures up there, but I haven't seen an operation. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go, but hopefully we'll get a good group to go.
And if you have somebody else that's maybe not on a committee, but another one of your elected officials, that sort of thing, I mean, that's an option too, if you want to open it up.
Okay, we'll move into item number 9, social media engagement.
Yeah, we kind of covered this. It's just, I think I really wanted to talk about this because I heard from a couple of legislators that have used this as their talking points throughout the session. And it was kind of cool to see their engagement. But I also noticed that those people don't generally like or retweet anything about the project, but yet they use it. And so I've kind of encouraged them to do that, which we've gotten a little bit more of, is share it with each other and that sort of thing. And so social media works best when you do it socially. And so feel free. I know you all have your own social media things, and I don't want to bombard it with diversion stuff, but we know that people don't mind spreading wrong information through those means. And so if this is a helpful way to get it from the source that goes through a fact-checking process, that's always helpful. So.
Okay, thank you. Item number 10, other business. Something that was just brought up prior to this meeting was our setup for these meetings on when we meet. I know we have the outreach meeting followed by lands, followed by finance, and I think there's a consensus amongst many of us that this setup for these types of committee meetings and dialogue does not work quite as well, and I think there's a preference to the round table down below. I know Chair Sherling said we should talk about it, and maybe we can come up with a consensus amongst all of our different committees as to what one setting, and because I think it would be easy to do because we all meet on the same day, so I don't think it would be. John, your digs up here are fantastic, and I love the technology, but for these types of committee meetings, I don't know that this is quite as. I certainly agree with Commissioner Sherling that this is really not the best setup for our committee work, and I'd ask for your thoughts, and we can share them with Commissioner Sherling, and maybe in the future we can move on to being, if you're all in agreement with that, then we can. I know she asked each of the committees to talk about it, so. Well, there you go. All right. Okay. Yeah.
Just to repeat on Mike, I think Mary was saying that it'd be great if all 3 committees agreed so that the staff here can keep it consistent. And so she'll work with Michael Redlinger on
and I think the fact that we all meet right after each other on the same day, what makes it easier to do that setup. So I'm in full support of it, so. Okay, do we have anything else, Mike?
Couple questions. Rocky, on the estimate, the updated estimate for the diversion project, how much contingency was in that estimate?
So there's, I think, $252 million in contingency, if I remember my table in my head right.
250 million? So if we got real lucky and didn't have any problems or run into anything funny, we'd have the funding?
You know, that there's a pretty intensive effort that goes into that contingency. It's made of a lot of different, percentages based off a lot of different risk factors. And so chances of you not using any of that is pretty unlikely. But it is contingency for a reason because you can't guarantee it's a cost. So getting lucky, certainly.
Well, we've put enough extra in there at least, so we're not that far off from being able to move ahead with the project, I would hope. Just a comment here.
Well, 1 second, Commissioner.
And I don't know exactly what you're referring to, but I know there's been a lot of conversation lately, how we're going to handle this shortcome that we perhaps will have. It looks like we probably will have, but the session's not out yet, so we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But we're a long ways away from figuring out what our next steps would be as far as our financial package. So we're going to have a group go back, sit down, our finance committee, our consultants, and see what the best path forward is. I mean, obviously, we're not going to stop doing what we're doing, and there are creative ways to make this work. We had the best financial packet that we could come up with that we presented to the legislature. So we will go back and find another one. But the idea that we are not going to come back with the same amount of ask or less is pretty unlikely. But we just want to be really careful that we don't send out a mixed message. We don't have those numbers yet. And so I just want to be real cautious to all our DA board members to just let the process work. Number one, let the legislature do their work. And then number two, let our finance people that I have a great deal of confidence in will figure out some recommendations for us. And the finance committee will look at those recommendations and send those to the board, and then we'll handle it from there.
Well, and I concur, and you got to always have something built in for unexpected expense. I understand. I'm not saying that, but my point is number one, we did put that in the planning process. We're not razor thin on our estimate. And of course, we'll never know until we get cost estimates from someone. We're never going to know exactly how close we are or how far away we are. So I understand and respect the process. I'm just saying, just trying to make a point that we didn't figure this down to the last dollar. We did plan for additional needs and stuff like that. So we still have things we have to get done, but we're not like we're way far away from being able to get it done. I guess that's kind of where I was driving on this.
Yeah, I think in a presentation yesterday at Commissioner Sherling's Kiwanis Club, I think we made the comment, when you're 2.6 of $2.7 billion, committed for a project, you're pretty close. You feel pretty good about that.
Just a comment, and I know in the past, Buffalo Red and the upstream folks have declined to participate in the Diversion Authority. And I believe they still have the opportunity, but I would think as this progresses forward, it's going to be probably even more important, I would think, for them to participate in making sure that things are being done, satisfactorily. It doesn't mean they have to like the project, accept it, or anything else, but my hope is that we still leave the door open for them. I think we have, but, whether they just want to participate at a committee level or whatever, I think that's important that they are part of that process when it comes time to mitigating or agriculture or any of those things. I think their input would be, important and helpful. So I hope they don't feel that they can't participate, and I don't think we've given them any indication that they can't.
Yeah, correct. There's a Diversion Authority board seat open to Richland and Wilkin County to jointly appoint that is not filled.
Okay, and just the last question, and it's probably a dumb question, but our crest at the red this year was 35 feet, and that's what the diversion is gonna be planned for. And I know there's still some work to be done in the city, but more or less, is that the experience people can expect on any given year where we have a significant flood?
Yeah, so one of the changes with Plan B is actually 37 feet.
37,
So it'd be higher than the current experience. And I think two important factors there is the project wouldn't have operated and it wouldn't have staged water upstream in a flood like this year. But I think for a lot of the area, I think I heard Jason Benson say the other day that 80% of the county's flood efforts this year, or some percentage like that, was within the protected area. That still would have seen that protection this year, even without the project operating. And so while it's kind of interesting, the project can provide benefit without impacting upstream. There's more you wanted to say on that?
Yeah, thanks. So, regarding in town and along the Red River and Wild Rice with the 37 feet of flow, we would have seen some additional impacts compared to this year. But like Rocky said, in the areas immediately west and northwest of West Fargo up through Harwood, we would see substantial improvements in the flooding. All of the different breakout water that's washed out roads, overtopped different roads, and cut off people from accessing their home without having to put on waders or go in a canoe or a boat. All of those issues would go away with the FM diversion. And those are some highly populated areas. There's 1,200 people that live in Reed Township. And then you add in Harwood and rural parts of the southern part of Harwood Township. All of that, adds up to well over 2,000 residents just up in that area that would have significant improvements for during a flood, as well as their flood insurance.
Jake?
There's been quite a bit of conversation about special assessments in the last week or two, and I noticed this morning someone wrote to the letter to the editor. It was pretty full of misinformation. I'm just wondering if this committee should be trying to address those questions, because they get out there, and if you don't refute them, everybody thinks they're gospel.
It's a really timely conversation, obviously, with the letter today. I had a conversation with the finance chair, Tony Grinberg, about that very subject right before the meeting here, and he was wondering, is that something, as he brought that proposal to City of Fargo to sort of reaffirm what we've said all along, that that's not our intent to use special assessments in that manner. One of the other city commissioners obviously pointed out at the meeting that it's really not the City of Fargo's decision. It's ultimately the water districts, and maybe that's one thing the letter writer also got right, is that it's the water district's authority. And so one of the comments Commissioner Grinberg had is that something the water district should respond to or would be willing to respond to, or if it should continue to be him as somebody. And so maybe that's a good conversation. I don't know, does your board meet tomorrow? Maybe it'd be a good conversation for your board to have to reaffirm the same intent as the years have gone on here. And I think that would probably be a welcome letter for the public to hear, is that their intent hasn't changed.
Okay. I agree. It's an excellent question, and it's and I really think that I'm going to be anxious to hear from the Finance Committee regarding this. And the one thing that we need to do as a diversion authority is speak with one voice regarding this. And so I'm going to look to our Finance Committee. I think we all know all along what the intent of the Special Assessment District was created for. It was created for the purpose of financing and nothing else. And to this day, I have never known anything different than for that reason. You know, so we'll have to, I look forward to hearing from, you know, Rick and those of you in finance on that. But again, it's very important we all speak with one voice and one opinion on what that intent is. And as far as I know right now, the intent was just to be able to secure better financing.
And then to, you know, in regards to Mike's comments about the cost of the project, you know, we spent a lot of time and a lot of money coming up with that estimate. And I think that we have to have confidence in that figure, and I think we need to project that confidence out to the public, that that's just not some figure that we picked out of the air. And right now, just in the last week, there's been 2 or 3, you know, off-the-cuff comments about the estimate being $4 billion or $3.2 billion, and I think we should address those and cut them off at the pass.
Vern.
You know, I think the water district.
Kevin, this is Roger.
Roger, can you hold on 1 minute? Vern was just about to speak.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I think the water district is not going to make a unilateral decision without consulting the county and the city and the diversion authority. So they wouldn't make a decision unless they had 100% support, and one way or the other. And the other thing on the contingencies, there's always things that come up that erode the contingency funds, and things that we don't know about yet. There will be, like the Georgetown, the Wolverton, and things of that nature, plus things that we don't even know yet for mitigation, will erode that fund.
Okay. All right, Roger, you want to comment?
Just a comment on outreach to Comstock Wolverton Co-op. The ones that were there last night heard from Kurt Biertness. He's the manager of that co-op, and it's like a 90-year-old co-op that's really concerned about the impact of this project on their business. And the last week we had an opportunity, Eric and Dr. Bob and Greg Thielman and myself had a chance to meet with the manager and some of his board members and discussed their issues and to find out if there was ways to support them or make them feel comfortable if they lose business because of this project. So that'll be an ongoing look at if there's something we can do to assure them that, you know, we're not here to hurt their business or cause it to fail. So that was just another outreach opportunity that we've had in this last couple weeks.
Anybody else have any other comments? Rocky, anything else? All right. I guess we can stand adjourned.